Okay, welcome back. It is late January 1873. It's been a bit of time since I managed to get a video up, a couple of weeks, which is fairly unusual. Lots of kind of real-world events abound have sort of vied to kind of make it a bit tricky to sort of commit the time to the game in the last couple of weeks. But I have been giving it a lot of thought, not least because I actually played to this date a couple of weeks ago and thought, ooh, a bit of a cliffhanger. I need to have a think about this, sit down and kind of... have a think about what to do, and you'll see why in a moment. Now, in the last video, I wanted to address two principal problems that was confronting the empire, and that would begin to confront the empire. One was the issue of kind of capital accumulation and concentration without the means really to unload it. We've reached a bit of a natural limit in terms of our ceiling for our domestic market. We can't really export more than we can, and there's also limitations imposed upon us based on our access to certain kinds of raw materials, one of them being coal. So I wanted to look at a way of kind of exporting capital, unloading capital in a way that's strategically benefited us, which is to say that we didn't want to invest in kind of adversaries or competitors, but for example investing in places like China, Japan if possible, maybe even Persia, powers. It might be in our interest to sort of develop them because they can keep other powers like Russia, the British, the French occupied, and it benefits them of course to have their kind of natural resources exploited. I wasn't really sure what kind of governed what we would control and what we wouldn't. And you can see that we've begun like a timber yard in kind of northern Korea. Korea is a protectorate of the Chinese Empire. Another timber site in Seoul in the Korean Peninsula. 3 timber sites in total, one of them in Manchuria. In fact, 4 timber sites, I beg your pardon. In addition to these timber sites, now timber is important, it's something that we don't have good domestic access to, so we're looking to kind of develop it in China, partly because that benefits us, but also because we want to create an availability of that sort of commodity on the international markets, so we can get good access to it. In terms of whether we retain control over the RGOs, that's a secondary thing. Obviously, it would be good, even if it's for a limited period of time, so that it kind of offers us a bit of return on the investment, but that's not a zero-sum thing. Now, so far, everything we've either begun building, or we have completed building. We've only completed building one thing. This was an experimental site. It was a rice paddy in Taipei. We don't produce any rice in the Ottoman Empire, so it made sense to see, if we could kind of exploit this market. Having a broader access to foodstuffs is good for national satisfaction. You're always going to shift kind of food produce and this kind of thing, so it made sense to. And also rice paddies were very cheap, so it was something that we could kind of roll the dice, see what happened. We've retained control over this site. It's not very productive, as you might imagine. It's in China. It doesn't have good access to sort of railroad access or anything like that, but that's come off really well. The second site is a tea plantation in Fuzhou, just so the other side of the whatever this is, the Taiwan Straits, I guess, as it would be called today anyway. A timber site also in sort of the southern part of the island, and we also begun constructing a couple of sites in Persia. Now, one of them is an opium plantation. In retrospect, we're probably not going to try and exploit Persia's opium resources. The reason being is because we have almost a monopoly on that market. It doesn't really benefit us. I mean, especially if we lose control of the site. We export a lot of opium. If we retain the control of this site, that'd be fine. It'll produce 3 units of opium. That's good. That's not a huge amount. But if we lost access to it, again, it wouldn't change too much. But if we start exploiting all of their opium sites, then, all it really does is hand them a slice of their market share. There's no point in really doing that. Like, there is a lot of opium that could be exploited in this particular region in Shiraz, but, I was going to think on that, I think. Now, one site that we began developing was in Abadan. This is an oil field. Now, it's worth noting that this is not the petroleum age. This campaign doesn't really depict or cover completely the transition from coal to petroleum. That's much more of a kind of begin to the Second World War, the 30s onwards, really. You begin the transition, and by the 50s and 60s, it's to a large extent complete, and you're living in the petroleum age. That isn't to say that there's still a lot of coal that's used during this period, but it doesn't mean to say that oil isn't used or petrol products aren't used. Oil is used as an industrial lubricant. Derivatives of oil, I guess petroleum would be used as a cleaner and so on. So our economy is growing more thirsty for this stuff, absolutely. Just by virtue, on the basis of of sort of developing machine plants, mechanization of agriculture, that kind of thing. It requires oil as a lubricant. So we began building an oil site in Abadan. It's such a small market at the moment, it didn't matter. And I instantly realized that I wouldn't have enough capital for it. So our capitalists were forced to borrow. That bumps up inflation. That is a risk. We're at 2% inflation. It's still very low. That's within the realms of acceptability. I tend to look at 3 or 4% and try and keep below that. But if you're at 2-3%, that's not too bad. That's okay. Now, we couldn't cancel the oil site. The reason being is there's civil disruption in Abadan. So we begun the site. We basically placed all the raw materials there. But the Persian government has limited control over this region because of strikes and civil disruption. So what really happens is we hand this capital and resources, we put it in this region, they instantly become controlled by the local populace. I guess if it was in another area, maybe, I'm not sure what passes for unions in Persia in the 1870s, probably not much, but it would be a similar kind of thing. The unions would essentially expropriate that resource, they take control of it because they're striking or whatever, and we can't cancel it or do anything, so we couldn't cancel it. And what was quite novel is that immediately following that, in the next term, the site went over to Persian control. I don't know if that is a function of the fact that they had limited control over Abadan, but in any case, we lost that resource. It was an investment. It doesn't matter too much, it doesn't even. I don't think it's even going to produce anything. Probably because the civil disruption that's going on there. It may also be because Persia doesn't yet have the technology to exploit that resource. I can't see any evidence of any other kind of petroleum sites, petroleum field drilling sites. So it may be they don't have the technology even to exploit it. But I would say it's more likely. It's just that they don't really have control over the workforce in Abadan at the moment. At some point, they'll probably start producing a very small amount of petroleum. So anyway, the plan to unload capital is going ahead. It's incurred a small amount of inflation because of this disruption in southern Persia. But the main focus, I think, is going to be China. We're going to be looking at coal and timber sites. And if we look over at also things like tea, silk would be good. Silk, nothing wrong with silk, And if we retain control over the sort of are they plantations, silk plantations? I don't know, whatever it is. Silk production sites, silk RGOs. If we retain control of them, that's really good as well. We've got one silk site. It's upgraded. I think it's like it's kind of it's like a kind of a Aberdonian silk. It is a plantation, but it consumes mechanical parts and chemicals, and it produces 9 units. So it's a really productive site. The ones in China are going to be a little bit kind of bit more old-fashioned, probably. Well, that said, because they're built by us, they probably will be built using the latest techniques and methods, but the Chinese market may well have limited access to chemicals and mechanical parts, which reduces the efficiency of the sites anyway. And they don't have railroad access. I don't think a lot of these places will have railroad access. So yeah, there are, at the moment, no railroads in China at all. That'll probably change fairly soon, but I don't think there are. As far as I can see, am I on the right filter? Yeah, I am, yeah. Yeah, there's no railroad sites in China just yet. That will begin to change, however. Yeah, but exploiting their silk resources would make sense as well, and also coal. They're very expensive in terms of capital. Very expensive to actually generate these sites abroad in other countries. So it is a way of unloading a huge amount of private capital for relatively little gain. But we have to spend it on something. Just accumulating and concentrating capital will serve as a catalyst for an economic crisis, which we don't want. Now, the other thing that we were looking to address is the kind of returning spectre of Austria. It was clear that after its last drubbing, which was about 3 years ago, the Austrians again had recovered their vigor. They were at war with Russia for a period of time. They have occupied Croatia, which is a satellite state of ours. They've intervened, well, they occupied Switzerland also. They had a brief war with France, and they've now intervened again and begun occupying the Italian peninsula. I suspect that Italy has just never really developed the means after its first defeat to regenerate its force. So I think Italy is fielding a very small army, which means that it's just never really able to kind of withstand Austrian aggression. The Austrians, on the other hand, have been very adept at kind of regenerating losses, regenerating their force and this kind of thing. And we can see actually now that they have a slightly larger army than us. It's like 1.3 of ours. So it's they are fielding a large army. It's a larger army than France, a larger army than China. It's one of the largest armies in the world again. So they've been able to regenerate a huge amount of force. And yeah, they're set on using that force. They want to change the balance of power in the Balkans, and of course they lost Fiume in the last war. they've lost Montenegro, and also they've lost Bucharest. Now, I was toying with the idea in the last video of what to do with Austria, what to do with a problem like Austria, because obviously it's 23 years into the campaign. We've been confronted now with a lot of Austrian aggression, almost continuous warfare, and at some point, as I mentioned in the last video, in the August report, it's going to bite us in the arse. At some point, we're going to be at war with someone else, and then Austria is going to do its kind of, its kind of routine sort of intervening in the Balkans again, waging war against us, and we would then be in a much more difficult position to counter Austrian aggression. To that end, the conclusion that I drew is that we would look at generating a kind of forever war, really turning kind of Hungary. We would take Vienna, but occupying a large part of the Austrian Empire long term, creating a kind of almost like a kind of reservation area, which would include Bohemia, I guess Austria proper, maybe east of or west of Graz, and confining the Austrians to a certain area, maybe north of the Danube, and sort of west of Graz, something like that. And we would periodically conduct sorties into these regions to destroy Austrian forces if they look to begin to concentrate. The aim of this conflict would be to systematically destroy the Austrian army and deprive it of the means to regenerate that force. It would mean a kind of forever war. It would be like the last war against the Austrians in the campaign. Now, you'll cast your mind back to 1850 when the campaign begun. It was never an intention in this campaign to redraw the boundaries of the Ottoman Empire to the kind of, its heyday, the period of of Ottoman, the kind of apex of Ottoman imperial power and influence. That was never really the intention. The intention was to provide the Ottomans with the means to withstand opponents, to try and preserve its position as best we could, and in some cases try and advance our position if opportunities presented themselves. We've probably almost been forced, in terms of the Balkans, we are being forced to kind of restore the boundaries, really, to the kind of the sort of time of Suleiman. It's sort of, we have to do this. We have to tame Austria, and I think the only way we can do this is occupying a large part of the empire, converting this area into a military frontier. It's not going to be economically developed or exploited. We're going to generate lots of small units that occupy the interior. To begin with, this will require, so the theory goes, this will require the majority of our field command, which will have to be concentrated and deployed in the Balkan Peninsula. Much of it already is. About 2/3, maybe 3/4 of our field command is already in the Balkan Peninsula, scattered a little bit. We'll bring the rest of our army, or most of it, into the Balkan Peninsula. And that will be required to obviously overcome Austrian forces, overcome their initial offensive, if that happens, and then begin to conduct an invasion. It's not the war season, it's late January, so we've got a couple of months really. We've got a few months to kind of get our forces into position to counter any Austrian moves, and then in the spring or early summer, look to conduct a sizable offensive into the Austrian Empire. It's not necessarily just about seizing territory with this war. We're not just looking for war score. We're looking to destroy the Austrian army wholesale. The other kind of benefit of this, of course, as I mentioned before, it's a bit of a side benefit, is that a kind of forever conflict provides us with a mechanism to kind of deal with national morale and internal dissent. The idea is that a kind of continuous militarized sort of situation in the Balkans will function as a social cohesive, will kind of we'll kind of rally the population behind the sort of Sultan and the imperial government, not least because we know we're going to be entering into a period where that might be undermined. So we can kind of periodically, seize control of cities. We could relinquish control of them. We could do that to maintain national morale. National morale will now naturally just continuously atrophy, and that is because of the kind of locked situation in both Greece and in Romania, where we're kind of locked into an insurgency, really, which is like a kind of conflict which we can't really end. We don't have the means to end it, and it looks like these micro-states don't have the means either to offer us a peace. So being in a permanent state of a war against a power where we actually have the means to acquire national morale is also a desirable thing, I think. And it might also, again, as a side benefit, offset or kind of mitigate some of the scripted events that might happen to us. It might not, but it might sort of cut across a lot of the problems. I mean, let's be real. It's 1873. Any scripted event that happens for the Ottoman Empire between now and probably 1907 is not going to be good for us. It's not going to go in our favor. It's not going to benefit us. So having a kind of, this kind of permanent conflict, it might cut across some of those things, which would It might not, of course. It might kind of arrest the events, firing or triggering, which would probably be balanced positive for us in truth, Yeah, so it's a forever war with Austria. Now, in terms of depicting this, obviously the initial campaign to destroy and defeat the Austrian army, maybe for the first year or the first couple of years, it's going to be worth depicting that. And then at some point, if the theory works, it will just become a natural state. And we'll be able to also, eventually, we will require less and less of our teeth arms to be deployed in the Austrian Empire. The idea is we whittle their force down to such an extent that it requires only 1 or 2 field commands. We'll probably have one based in Croatia, one based in Hungary, and these commands will be used to conduct sorties northward periodically. We don't intend to enter Germany proper. Bavaria, for example, will likely declare war on us, maybe Saxony also, because they are kind of satellites of Vienna. We're not going to really intervene in those states, I don't think. I'm not sure if this is going to facilitate German unification. I'm not sure if German unification is on the cards now, to be frank, but we'll see what happens there. So that's it, really. Yeah, to the business of the day. One thing that has happened is this: the declaration of war by Austria on us, which has just happened, by the way. So the Austrians have declared war on us. It has resulted in two-star generals spawning. That's interesting. That means that there must be some kind of algorithm based on, obviously, what our foreign relations are, but also based on maybe the size of our army, where commanders are generated. These are completely generic kind of 2-star commanders. So they're not real kind of figures, but it's Eşref Pasha and Ali Pasha. Both of them have completely average, generic boilerplate kind of stats, But yeah, anyway, so greatness has been foisted upon us, and I think the first order of the day is to then kind of look at our forces and begin the campaign. I might make this a bit of a bumper episode because obviously it's been a bit of time, and yeah, there's going to be a little bit to cover, I think. So the second army is in Bosnia Herzegovina, or in Sarajevo to be more precise. We'll take that force out of the city. We'll begin to arrange our commands. So we're going to give the Imperial Guard over to Mehmed İzzet Pasha. The next army is, the first army is in Bulgaria. Now that army is under the command of Mehmed Ali Pasha. The first army contains the first units that we had, really, the first professional corps. I mean, this army, the first commander of this army, of course, Rita Pasha, and then for a period of time it was commanded by Omar Pasha. So this is probably our most experienced army with probably our best general. We'll move one of the 2 stars, I think, to join that. We'll stick them on a train, make it a little bit faster, not that it matters too much. We've got the third army then in West Croatia, or Fiume. And we got a 3-star in the form of Osman Nuri Pasha. Let's have a look, because we might give him a field command, because he's actually not bad. We're going to move Bezi Pasha to the east. We've got the 4th army. So my thinking is we give the 4th army over to Osman Nuri, and then move the other 2-star up to take command of the Imperial Guard Corps. Now, we've got railroads that go up there. Osman Nuri is a pretty decent commander. Yeah, we're giving command of the 4th. That's in Smyrna for now. That will obviously be brought up to Adrianople, I guess. It's 11 days. I beg your pardon, the 3rd army. Oh, am I going? No. No, it is the 4th army. Yeah, good. 7th army is in Erzurum. Now we're going to relieve these 2 commanders, I think. What have we got in Syria? We've got a commander in Syria. That's the 5th army. At the very least, we're going to keep this command in the east. This is mostly comprised of mountain divisions. It is a fully fledged command, but we will retain 1 command in the east, and the army that we have in Syria will be brought up, of course, using railroads. So we've got Suleiman Pasha. He's a pretty decent commander, this guy. Admired commander, tactician of Elan. I think we'll bring him... Yeah, we'll bring Suleiman Pasha, the Lieutenant General, to Smyrna with a view to give him command of the Imperial Guard Corps of that command. You'll cast your mind back. We expanded our Imperial Guard Corps fairly significantly to try and recreate in spirit, at least, obviously the Janissaries didn't exist by now, but to recreate the Janissaries in all but name, to have a really elite kind of corps to every field command. And but in the case, oh no, I beg your pardon, yeah, we do have a guard corps. So every field command has a guard corps, which is quite rare. Most armies, the guard corps in most of their armies is much smaller. This is one of the things that has been key to our success, incidentally. Even when outnumbered, the fact that we've had this elite corps at the heart of every field command has they sort of allowed us to punch a little bit above our weight. They are much more expensive, but it's kind of paid dividends in the long run. So every field command has that kind of elite corps, and the rest of the field command is comprised of professional line soldiers. But and now that we kind of have less 2-stars to go around, the idea is that every field command has one 2-star. He gets command of the Imperial Guard Corps, and if we need to break that corps off to function independently, we know that it's going to be able to handle itself, sort of thing. We've got the 4th Army in Smyrna, and then the 5th Army is in Syria. So the 5th Army is going to be brought up using rail, probably a corps at a time. We might be able to squeeze 2 corps. Yeah, we can. So we're going to bring... start bringing that, I think, to kind of Adrianople. Or in fact, we can be a little bit more brave. We'll bring it all the way up to kind of Sofia. "11 days, good stuff." So 5th. Just put an R to denote kind of reserve formations that are being brought into play. How many rail points have we got? We've still got a lot of rail pull points, actually. That's good. That uses most of our rail pull points. Now the Austrians have kind of scattered their forces out, you know, looking almost to create a kind of continuous front. The biggest concentration we can see is on our right, their left. Now that's what we can see. We have had experience before where the Austrian AI has been quite adept at kind of concealing forces and then kind of making a move. So they're likely to move a command down, I'm guessing it's to Moldavia, and then they're probably going to move von Henigstein, I guess, against Ahmed Mukhtar Pasha. He's very young, isn't he? This character, this 3-star now, is probably going to be with us until the end of the campaign. Because in 1870, he's like a really young officer. He's only in his 30s, despite being very senior. And I think he was a commander in the First World War. By then, a very senior commander, you know, a very well-known public figure. I'm not sure I mentioned it before, but the Turkish Republic, when it was first founded in the 20s, they minted a coin with his head on. So he had this kind of prestige which transcended the Ottoman state, you know. Again, by the First World War, he was very old. I think he died in the 20s. Either at the end of the First World War or in the 20s. But I guess they got to make a move against his command in Bucharest. That suits us, man. He is a stellar defensive commander. Good meticulous strategist, overcautious. So yeah, he's an out-and-out defensive commander. Now the worry is that the Austrians make a play with both commands and try and press onto him. So we want to try and get some concentration in Bucharest. Now, if I've already set a 2-star to join with Mehmed Ali. If I move Mehmed Ali, that 2-star will reroute. We've got railroads going into Bucharest. So let's bring up the 1st army. It's 12 days. We're going to set the 6th army to hold at all costs, buy a bit of time. And this combined should be enough to sort of hold our position in Romania for the time being. My thinking is that on the left, we're going to basically, in a similar kind of way to previous conflicts, break our commands into kind of Army Group East and Army Group West. Army Group West is mostly going to be kind of like a bit of a holding operation. We're obviously going to clear the Dalmatian coastline, but for the most part, it's going to be a holding operation that will begin to put pressure on the Austrians. But we want the real punch, I think, because this is where the Austrians have typically concentrated most of their force. Maybe because it's closer to Constantinople. They also have claims, for example, on Bucharest. So we think that the Austrians, most of the Austrian pressure is going to come in the east. So we're going to, I think this is where the real force is going to be. We might even keep Army Group kind of West limited to 2 commands. In the first, I think the first off, we're going to get the 3rd Army to conduct an offensive or an assault south to begin clearing the Dalmatian coastline. So that's 5 days. Weather's not too bad. So we got a lot of snowfall. This is this kind of white area, snowfall. This yellow area represents kind of torrential rain. And it's pretty much rain at sea as well. Ocean of snow, in fact. Yeah. Snow in the kind of central highlands of Anatolia. And then also, and we got blizzard conditions. Yeah, but also snow in eastern Anatolia. Okay. One thing that we can do, given that the purpose of this war is to really destroy Austrian forces when opportunity present themselves, is we can just conduct kind of conduct kind of sorties against the Austrians, destroy their forces, fall back. I mean, Sarajevo's got a decent garrison, so we're going to do just that, I think, with Hussein Avni and his command. He's a fast mover, so we'll move north. We'll assault, I think, Peterwarden, and then we'll fall back to Sarajevo. That's 7 days. Now, the hope is the Austrians reinforce this position. The more forces they have, the more we get to destroy, kind of thing. They've got a little bit of concentration in Zagreb, but it's not a huge amount. But again, we can't necessarily see everything that they have got. They are technically still at war with Italy, although again, I suspect Italy just doesn't have much of an army. Now, the Austrians do not have any kind of navy at all. That's really good. And from what I can see, they don't have much of a merchant fleet operation either. So it's not like we can even really engage any kind of trade interdiction against them. But we will kind of keep an eye on that. We'll scrutinize their naval power. But I think their naval power was destroyed by the British long ago, and it's just never really recovered. There is a French, I think it looks like probably a Corvette squadron, docks. The French have transit and access rights to us. That's a long-term arrangement that we've had with them to try and kind of, bolster relations. Let's check the arsenal in Adrianople. Now here we've got a corps that's been constructed. We've got the Adrianople garrison. We've got a guard corps as well, which has been constructed. You'll recall from the last video that we are in the process of constructing an additional army. So it will be the 8th Army when complete. We've got a reserve pool. Now this reserve corps was initially comprised of Czechs, and they've now mostly been converted. There's a few of them that still are Czech, ethnically Czech. Now what this reflects is that the longer these units spend time in the Ottoman Empire, soldiers leave service. Those soldiers that don't, they become kind of naturalized over a period of time. They begin to adopt increasingly the kind of culture of the host power. Their uniforms change a little bit as well. So even though this was initially comprised of POWs from a prior war with the Austrians, This is just gradually becoming an Ottoman unit, and the idea is this might function as the third corps in a new command. We've already got 2 corps constructed, got heavy artillery as well. Let's quickly check Sinop. These are just garrison forces with a light cavalry brigade. And we've got marines. Okay. We've deployed our marines into Cyrenaica. Again, I mentioned in the last video, we want to try and maintain a permanent military presence here to counter any sort of insurgencies or problems that might develop from Egypt. In terms of our military moves, that's basically the opening play. So we're going to conduct a sortie into Slavonian or Petervarden. We'll take the town, destroy the Austrian forces there, clear the Dalmatian coastline from Spalato down to Cattaro, and then we can turn the Third Army around on itself and begin marching north. Now, we do need a 2-star to take command of the Imperial Guard Corps in Abdul Karim's army. So I think probably what we're going to earmark for that will be... so Eshadef is going to Bulgaria, will be Ali Pasha, I think, in Constantinople. We're going to bring him north then, to Sarajevo. Put him inside the city when he's there. Just checking the rest of the empire. No, that's a naval officer who's setting south to take control of the kind of Persian Gulf fleet. The Persian Gulf fleet will eventually morph into an Indian Ocean fleet, probably with its main base in Aden, but will be responsible also for operations in the Persian Gulf. We might retain a small corvette or a frigate squadron in either Kuwait or Basra, or in fact, actually, it won't be, it'll be Qatar, because that's where our main naval base is now in the Persian Gulf. So we might maintain a permanent small force for this region, but we are going to begin to eventually construct a fully fledged Indian Ocean fleet, so that we've got the maritime means to kind of impose ourselves in this region, because of course we do have a long-term plan for the Horn of Africa, and we have a position in Zanzibar, and you know, in time, maybe decades from now, if the means present themselves, to kind of begin to oppose ourselves more broadly in East Africa. Yeah, in terms of our military moves, I think that's it. Let's just check through the list again. 4th Army, Smyrna, Wallachia, Erzurum is the 7th Army, is the only army we're going to probably keep out of the Balkan Peninsula. We're going to keep that, for the most part, based in the east. That'll be given control of Bezi Pasha. 3rd Army, West Croatia, that's Fiume, that's going down to Spalato. 1st Army in Bulgaria, he's heading north to Bucharest. And Hussein Avni's the 2nd Command, Sarajevo, that's moving north. Yeah, that's everything, basically. That's all the moves that we want to make. That's our opening play for the last war against Austria. Let's check the other reports really quickly. So we've got the 2 commanders, we've got the reports for that, that's good. Finished building a railroad in Thessalia. Okay, very good. The Austrians capture them now because they're at war with us. Fine. So we're buying 15 mechanical parts from Britain, 15 coal, plus 25 coal, plus 8 coal, plus 1 coal from, so you can see the amount we're importing. Importing 25 units of wood from Prussia, 5 units of wood from Prussia, additionally, so 30 units of timber, and then it's down to exports. I mean, our trade balance is still sound. That sounds like we're importing loads, and we are. But we do have a much bigger economy than we had, you know, some years ago. So again, we're importing more coal. Argentina, Chile, we're spreading, you know, as much as we can where we're importing coal from, because availability is going to start getting dicey, I think. We've got a bit of a stockpile to fall back on, but if we weren't importing coal now, we'd be losing about 70 units per fortnight. So our economy just uses a lot of coal. So imports 241 units at 984. Exports 300 units at 1600. Domestic market sales 384 for also 1600. Drop off in exports, but that's okay. High taxes bump satisfaction. Down. Let me just check exports to make sure that everything's been set. If it hasn't, I'll do that now. Keep manufacturing goods as they are for the time being. Chemicals we're importing, coal we're stockpiling, steel is recovering. Should be 75 next turn based on estimates, so we'll keep an eye on that. One thing that we could do once we get enough steel to save on coal is to mothball some of our steel plants. It's an option. So nitrates are still really good. We're fine with. We are still investing in a research, which is a kind of an upgrade for chemical plants, which I'm guessing is going to make them much more thirsty for nitrates. We've got reasonable access to nitrates. A lot of coffee for sale. Timber, we're good. Let's check our assets balance. 2% inflation, 16,000 stockpile. Yeah, timber's good. See, our demand for North German coal is set to 50. Overall demand is 143, including us. Availability is 118. So you can see that globally, consumption of coal is beginning to kind of eclipse supply. Now, there's plenty of spare capacity in the world. There's plenty of like unexploited coal sites. It's just kind of relying on the AI to develop them competently. Okay, I'm happy with all that. No issues there. Economy's looking good, no significant problems, no Austrian Navy to disrupt trade. One thing that the kind of plan that we have with Austria, this idea of a kind of occupation zone. I mean, one thing that this will do for us, we won't really be able to exploit their economy. But it'll just be a wasteland, it'll be a military zone with lots of small units kind of controlling the interior. But it will expand our domestic market. We'll be able to shift more goods, which is good. Just reading through the other reports really quickly. That's pretty much it. Population increase in Bulgaria, Drobeta, Syria, Akari. Okay. Alright, that's it. That's pretty much the turn. It's late January. I'm going to pass turn, put you on pause, and we'll pick up on the other side. So yes, you're on the other side. Okay, welcome back. It's early February. Turn has been passed, and let's have a look at some of the reports. So we've had the opening kind of engagements then of this war. You'll note this war has not started with any kind of fanfare. I thought I can't really do a flavour video. It's almost like it feels just terribly normal and ordinary to be at war with Austria now. But first engagement then is Abdelkarim Nadir moving south from Fiume. He engages actually rebel forces, local rebels, quite cool uniforms. Destroys these forces entirely, occupies Spalato. There were Austrians. I think the Austrians might have moved north. They might have actually slipped through Fiume, gone to Zagreb, or maybe they were destroyed by the rebels. There is a German command, or a sort of Prussian North German Federation command, observation command in Spalato. They don't have access rights with us, so that force will be compelled to move and leave. There is also a German force in central Hungary. Yeah, what does this mean? I think time will tell I can't see Germany declare war on us. I don't think Prussia even has a casus belli against us. Let's have a look. Where are we? Prussia, there we go. It's still called Prussia then, not the North German Confederation. Yeah, they don't. I mean, they don't have. Casus belli on Texas, how random. They don't even have a casus belli against Austria, which is surprising. They do against Croatia. Military access through Württemberg, Saxony, Hesse-Darmstadt. Well, it's mutual access. Interesting. France gives them military access. That must mean that they did win the war with France, but it might have been for reparations. They didn't get Alsace-Lorraine. But that conflict, even though it's over, did not serve as any kind of catalyst for German unification. Netherlands, Bosnia. Let's wait that. They have a defensive treaty with Austria and promise local support, but I mean, you know, hey, Austria declared war on us, so that doesn't give them a CB on us. So I don't think they can do anything. They just forces of observation. Behind that, there are significant Austrian forces inside Budapest. The Austrians themselves have not conducted any opening moves, so they obviously feel that time is not a factor. Huge Russian force there, a lot of big supply detachments. So it's not like they've moved into Romania. No engagements in the east at all. And this was our assault on Pieterwarden then. Disappointing, we only destroy the garrison, inflict 3,200 casualties. It looks like the main Austrian force slips away. That's not what we want. We don't really want to take territory. We want to destroy the Austrian army. That's it. That's the opening engagements. I think what we're going to do from here, because the Austrians haven't, even though there's a lot of snow is now kind of blanketing the sort of central northern Balkans, we are going to conduct operations and try and be aggressive early on. Austrian forces are a little bit strung out. They've not got good force concentration. Their forces seem to be kind of slipping away from engagements. So we're going to try and be as aggressive as we can early on. All of our commands are activated. So we're going to get the 3rd Army south to take Kataru. The Adriatic obviously has a moderating impact on weather on the coast, so quite clement weather on the coast as 6-day march. That's set to assault, and that's good. We're going to get Ali Pasha, I think, to join the command from Sarajevo. Oh, hello, here we go. So I think we make a move north against Croatia. They've got a Hungarian corps, 1870 to 1890, and other mixed smaller forces. So we send the 2nd Army north to assault Zagreb. That's 7 days. And then 11 days. So we're gonna try and make a kind of fast move. Hussein Avni is a fast mover, and the hope here is he'll assault both towns and kind of destroy these forces in detail. Really, combined, the forces the Austrians have in kind of Budapest and Zagreb would be a considerable force, but they're divided. They've got the Drava, so we conduct an assault on Zagreb, cross the Drava into kind of Western Hungary, and then assault Budapest. And again, the idea is to destroy forces. We can fall back if we need to Pieterwarden. Hussein Avni's command is in good shape, so I see no reason why we can't do that. And likewise in the east. The Austrians have sat tight in Kronstadt. Weather is much bleaker in the east. The command in Bukovina has not moved south. So I think we're going to conduct a kind of move north towards Kronstadt. So it's 11 days each. Okay, so the 6th Army gets there a little bit beforehand. In fact, what we need to do before we do that is structure our commands. Now they'll have 2 stars. Okay, that's kind of more like it. So 7 days and 7 days. 7 days apiece. Good. Okay. So you've got the detached element of the 5th Army has arrived from Syria. We should be able to send the rest of the command now. We've got a lot of railroad points now. We can carry a lot of weight. So I think we'll move the rest of that command then to Sofia. Here we can. That's good. 11 days. Excellent. And we've got our officers then have arrived to take command of the 4th Army in Smyrna. So the command goes to Osman Nuri. We give the Imperial Guard over to Suleiman Pasha. Excellent, and we're in business. How long will it take the 4th Army to march to Adrianople on foot? 19 days. 75% chance of a force march to get some speed up. And that brings it down to 15 days if it comes off. I think we'll do that. We'll force march, and they're close enough that we can do it on foot. And we've got railroad points. Our railroad kind of rolling stock infantry is tied up at the moment with the redeployment from Syria. So there's a good chance that by next turn, the only downside is the force will be much more disheveled, I suppose. 50-48. And then in Eastern Anatolia, we've got Beyazid Pasha. We'll give him command of the 7th Army, and we're going to take Abdi Pasha out, strategically redeploy him to Adrianople, get him to enter the city, and then we'll begin to construct a force around him comprised of a guard corps. We'll put everything into the reserve pool, shall we? So the command point for this reserve corps is now 12. The command cost is the same as a regular Ottoman command, which is interesting. And it has about the same quality, same firepower, as a regular new line infantry corps. So this is a naturalized corps now, I think. We'll see what happens. We'll see if that actually comes to pass. We might use the heavy artillery, but we need to construct some kind of support units for that command. We've got a nice bit of state capital. It's a good kind of gold conversion last turn. So 62, 14 manufactured goods. We've got plenty of resources. We've got steels up to 75. This would generate 3 independent artillery regiments. Steel's at 51. Three supply wagon units. In terms of specialized support forces, is all we can give them at this time. That's fine. Okay. So those units are going to be earmarked for what will be the new command, the 8th Army, that we're going to sort of build around, what's his name? Abdi Pasha in Adrianople. And what we might be able to do, actually, what have we got in terms of, is to use the service asset units from, what have we got? Yeah, like a signal, military police. We only need those, really. Maybe the cavalry. Okay, so we don't have it yet, but that force is detached from the 7th Army, so that gives it some mobility for reconnaissance, military police for cohesion, signal regiment for increased command point allotment, and that would also be sent to Adrianople once we have the rail resources, and that'll kind of yeah, that'll make that command that much more effective. Check the other reports really quick. Oh, we've got railroads going all the way into Athens now. Excellent. We've got a nitrates quarry. How much would it cost to upgrade that? Yeah, we can do that. That leaves us a little bit low on steel. We should still have enough. But... so we'll be back to 52 next turn. That's fine. Okay, good. The economy is set. I'm just checking again, making sure that everything we want that's kind of dumped on the world market is so. Private capital is at 4,000. Probably then in late February we'll look to unload some and look at maybe developing a site in China. That's all good, no problems. Officers down to 20, we have spent out. Assets balance looks good, demand is being met. Check the Academy of Sciences really quickly, so we're pretty close now to getting, I think it's brown bismutic powder, reasonably close. And within, I think, a year to 2 years, we're going to have a lot of these kind of ironclad kind of designs in the bag. Of course, we have got a maritime construction program that's still running. Got a squadron of ironclad frigates. So 2 of these squadrons have been complete. So you've got 1 squadron of ironclad corvettes complete, and 1 squadron of ironclad frigates complete. Put them in the main fleet reserve. I think we'll detach one of the big capital ships. So it is 40 victory points, no national morale. Okay, fine. So that's a squadron of kind of old-fashioned kind of triple-decker timber ships. 1873, you know, I mean, these ships... So the funny things with like Age of Sail ships is they just lasted such a long time. These ships could have been built 100 years ago. You know, it's extraordinary, really. I mean, I think in Trafalgar you had like the Victory. A number of the ships that were at the Battle of Trafalgar were like 100 years old. I mean, they were built on a generational basis. Unlike modern ships, I mean, from now, I guess because the Industrial Revolution leads to continuous dramatic changes in technology, meaning that ships just very quickly kind of, the designs become eclipsed and this sort of thing. I think actually we're going to be in a position to remove, I mean, these frigates have a higher, these ironclad frigates have a higher raw combat value than Age of Sail battleships now. So, one thing that we have done is we have begun the construction of some actual ironclad battleships. Now, this is the strange thing, because there weren't really ironclad kind of battleships. They've got 1,000 crew. So these are really going to be like really, really large frigates, almost kind of experimental, you know. And there are a few examples. I think the French, I can't remember the names of them now. But the French did build a variety of very large ironclad, which kind of bridged the gap really between kind of I suppose the introduction of industrial shipping changes the definition of shipping a little bit. I mean, like in the modern era, no one's building battleships or anything like that, but probably a modern kind of missile cruiser, you know, because of the technology makes it as effective as a battleship, and it's more cost effective to build. Just building kind of traditional kind of battleships with huge batteries sat on barbettes would just be pointless now, you know, especially if it could be sunk using one missile or torpedo. And likewise, you know, like there will be a period, of course. I mean, when we start going into kind of large steel ships, where you have a return of the kind of Queen of the Sea, the really large capital ships, and they will be the new kind of battleships. But in the kind of ironclad period, you could just build a much smaller ship with better guns that are just, yeah, I mean, they're just much more effective than triple-decker timber ships. Okay, that's it. Going to put you on pause past turn. Everything's kind of done. All of our operations, then are kind of planned. Probably the most risky of all of these is going to be Hussein Avni, the Second Army. It's a bit of a complex maneuver, this, and in difficult weather. He is a fast mover, so he's well suited to it. He's an experienced, very, very experienced seasoned commander now. So if anyone can pull this off, it's him. And the idea is we're kind of doing this before the Austrians are able to concentrate. If we can kind of conduct operations now, the opportunity presents itself to defeat the Austrian army in detail. It may not come to pass because we don't know what's concealed, you know, but my assumption is that the Austrians have fairly substantial forces in Italy. I mean, they've just taken northern Italian cities, which would require, you know, fairly large forces to besiege these cities. And it looks like they're pressing into the interior of the Italian peninsula. So yeah, I'll put your pause past turn, and we'll see you on the other side. Early Feb now? So I guess in late Feb. See you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. It's late February, and good round. It's a good beginning to the war. It's kind of a script that we're familiar with. Easy, convincing victories, sluggish, kind of cumbersome, predictable Austrian moves, and a kind of tentativeness on the Austrian part to sort of, to really kind of press home any regional advantages they have. The first action then is Peter Varden. I think this is the remainder of Austrian forces, or possibly Austrian forces that had been trying to slip into the town that arrived on Railroad, and they kind of, I think half of them were taken as prisoner. But comfortable action there. Next action then is in Croatia. So the Austrians do try and put a force in. They've got 72,000 men against 95,000 of ours. You wouldn't think that we had such a slight numerical advantage. It's a comfortable victory. We destroy 2 elements, inflict 6,000 casualties. Take 3? I think it's 100 companies. I think it's 3,000 prisoners, 0 casualties. So it's which is incredible, really, when you consider that we've taken sort of destroyed 2 entire elements. So that's going to be firepower advantage, I guess. Now these are infantry, these are brigades, Landwehr, but I think Landwehr brigades are like almost the size of divisions. There's a slightly weird thing with these Landwehr brigades, but anyway, that's a comfortable victory. Now the first really big battle of the war then is with the remainder of that Austrian force in Croatia. Hussein Avni Pasha takes the fight to them, and this time it's a serious action. It's a convincing defeat. We lay waste to huge numbers of Austrian elements. We inflict, 46,000 casualties? That's really nice. Out of a force of 52,000. So we almost completely really destroy that Austrian command. We take 10,000 casualties, and we take 22,000 prisoners. It's a really nice action. In some pretty difficult weather. This Austrian force is mixed then. It's comprised of regular field commands, army corps, but also garrisons that they have in the area. And that army corps, I think, from the material and the prisoners we take, we get 2 national morale points for that, which we are keeping an eye on national morale, because that's really a part of the function of this conflict. We take enough material, prisoners, and Austrian officers that are prepared to provide us with their service to construct a volunteer army corps, which at the moment is just kind of a skeleton of officers and some artillery. We're going to put that that force is very small. It's it's a few thousand men at this point, but we're going to put that force on rails and take it 7 days to Adrianople and put it in the garrison. Job done. That's really, really good. Second engagement then is at Kronstadt. This is the Austrian commander von Henigstein. It's only a command of 61,000. We have 2 armies obviously plunging into that force, but it's a skirmish in difficult weather. No kind of decisive action here. They lose only like just 4,000 men. They do have a smaller force. Henigstein is not a great officer. He's also, in fact, a naval officer. And in fact, there's a naval officer under his command. So yeah, we could pretty much break even in what is a really, a breaking skirmishing engagement. The Austrians are kind of maybe set to evade combat. Doesn't look like they've fallen back. The Austrian command is still in the area, in the district. We still have the First Army activated under Mehmed Ali. We're going to keep him set to an offensive posture, all-out attack to try and clear the district. We're going to keep the 6th Army in place to support him. Now, to the left, in Hermannstadt, Austrian forces have begun to press in. They are besieging. They haven't crossed anything, but they've moved into Western Romania and they're sieging Drobeta. This looks like it's an army corps size force, but our railroads have allowed us to achieve force concentration very quickly at Sofia. This is the 5th Army. Now completely kind of constructed. It's organized. We don't have a 2-star in place for that command just yet. But that commander is now in a position to press north to hold the left flank then of Army Group East. We're going to set Ahmed Pasha to an offensive posture, all-out attack. We don't always do all-out attack unless we're fairly sure that we're going to score. It's going to be a win, because if it's touch and go, this could, and it has in the past, lead to the wholesale annihilation of entire army commands, which is not something that you want. Even at this stage, that would take a lot of time and money to reconstruct. It would not be desirable. This means that we're going to see heavy casualties on either side. But yeah, it means that our force is going to really aggressively press home its numerical advantage. 2% command penalty for this force. What we might look to do is to break off an army where there is excess command points. So for example, the First Army has 2 command points to spare. And that gives +2 command points. Let's remove that from his command. Yeah, and that's 50. So we're going to do that. We're going to set this surface asset unit to evade combat. And we're going to try and move it into Drobeta to join up with the 5th Army. That should serve to kind of deal with that 2% command penalty. Because the service asset unit, the Signals Regiment, it's just more needed in this command. Yeah, I don't like that. I think to begin with, we'll move it south to Bucharest. We'll make sure that we secure Drobeta properly. We'll hold the 5th Army in place for the time being to allow for reinforcements. And this command would benefit from a signals unit. Yeah, good. Okay. That's Army Group East pretty much kind of like dealt with. Now, the other thing, of course, is we force marched a command from Smyrna. That command is now in place in Adrianople. Weather is beginning to clear up in the Balkan Peninsula. He says. Not really, actually. Late February still, though, to be expected. Now, even though organization is quite poor, we are going to try and begin to push this command north to get into a position where it can kind of intervene. Now, my thinking is that probably the 4th Army will comprise the right flank of Army Group East and will be used to ultimately clear everything kind of north of the Carpathians. That's really going to be the function of this command. So to that end, we are going to conduct a march north to Constanta to take up a staging position. It's 22 days. It's not what you want to see. We've still got a 70% chance on a force march. That brings it down to 17 if it comes off. It's likely to come off. But this organization has, this unit has just conducted a force march. Its organization is impacted. The idea is we're really looking to press it to get to a staging area. But if this comes off, it's a good march. I mean, within about 5 weeks, we've got 100,000 men from Smyrna all the way out to Constanta entirely on foot, in inclement weather. So that would be, if it comes off, that would be good. It will require time in Constanta to get its kind of, force in order, ready to conduct operations. In terms of Army Group West, then, with this command, we're going to keep us 2 armies, and we're going to be looking to try and make waves as and when we can. We've got Ali Pasha now then in the 3rd Army is in command of the Guard Corps. That's done. So yeah, the idea is we're going to be making waves, you know, conducting sorties as and when we can. We can see an Austrian force under a commander I don't think we've met before, von Nyperg, or Nyperg. We'll see if he's any good or not. Doesn't appear to have great stats based on our intelligence. It looks like his command is not dramatic. It's not remarkable. It's an army corps with 2 supply wagons, but combined with the garrison and a variety of smaller units the Austrians have assembled in Budapest, that gives it a bit of a command kind of a reasonable kind of statistics, but only on a defensive basis. With operations to clear the Dalmatian coastline complete, we're going to move the 3rd Army to Slavonian. That's a 20-day march. It's a shame. It's in tough weather. 60% chance of a forced march. Brings it down to 15 days if it comes off. That's pretty much flipping a coin with one side slightly weighted. We're going to maintain a position, I think, in Croatia for the time being. Anticipate the Austrians conduct an offensive there. We're set to a defensive posture. I think at this point we will hold at all costs. We're confident that the Austrians don't have a force that's going to necessarily overwhelm us. So holding at all costs will provide us with a defensive benefit, I think, in that case. And that's pretty much it. Like, in terms of our operations, let's just check the Eastern Command. Well, we've got the rail points now, I think. Yes, we've got Bayezid Pasha. We've got the rail points then to bring the rest of these units to Adrianople. Put them on rails, Adrianople. 7 days. Enter the structure. So we've got the 4th Army, Avdi Pasha, Reserve Pool. Yeah, no, so that's not the case. It says commander weight is 12, but it's not. That's a shame. So we will be looking to construct an additional corps, I think. How far are we off? 21, 28. I mean, this militia corps will be eventually trained up. So these are basically conscripts. We'll leave it till next turn, and we will recruit an army corps of conscripts. We'll begin the conscription of an army corps of conscripts. Then, and we'll take this kind of volunteer force out then, I guess. How to play this? Yeah, we're just going to maintain this force in Adrianople for the time being. And we'll need to construct a 3rd corps, I suppose. That's okay. I mean, it's not urgent that we construct that force. It just gives us a little bit more kind of muscle in the Balkans, really. But that's it. So we've got to look to establish the kind of left flank of Army Group East in the next fortnight, ideally. That's not a forced march. It's 10 days. I can't see that being a major problem. And then begin to form up on the right at Constanta. That might take a bit longer, and then it's going to require a longer period of time for that force to get in shape. In terms of the centre, we're going to hold our position for the time being. Clear the district, because there's still Austrian forces in Kronstadt. The city itself has fallen. And then Army Group West, just the secure position of the south bank of the Drava, and begin to prepare for operations, I guess, into central Hungary. Yeah. Now, one thing that we could possibly do here is detach the guard corps of the Mehmedizet. He's activated and secure, because what I'm worried about is these sort of irregular mixed Austrian forces begin to kind of move down and create problems in the Dalmatian coastline. So to that end, I'm going to detach the guard corps, get it to operate independently whilst we hold the second army in place. And we're going to move into Laibach. We're going to assault the town. It's a 7-day march, and clear that district, and possibly also secure Trieste. Now, Trieste would be good, because I mean, we have the good thing with Fiume is that we've kind of doled out the money to sort of fortify this position. We've got a really big fortress, a redoubt now in Sarajevo. But that means that the Austrians are not going to be able to move freely and openly. They're going to have to secure the fortress at Fiume in order to then supply significant forces into the Dalmatian coastline. And securing kind of Istria, or securing the Polar Peninsula, is an additional layer of fortified cities. This is also a significant objective, incidentally. It's an important Austrian city. Yeah, that's it. Happy with that. It's an infantry division. Yeah, there's nothing else I can think of doing. Okay, let's check the rest of the reports. That's pretty much all the actions then. Yeah, an additional engagement in Kronstadt where we destroy the garrison and obviously take the town. That's 16,000, 8,000 surrender. We suffer negligible casualties for that. Let's just sort of rifle through the remaining reports really quickly. So Zagreb has gone over to Croatian control, as expected. We do have access, I believe, in Croatia. Let me double check that. I mean, the fact that our forces haven't... Yeah, we got military access in Croatia. It's good. Well, congratulations for Apen Muhtar and Mehmedizet. Bit of experience for our commanders. Good round economically. I mean, exports have been set for the next turn. We've begun shifting a lot of agricultural produce in the last sort of fortnight, a huge amount. Just check our position in the Horn of Africa. Make sure that nothing weird is happening. Great, so we've got a commander in the Persian Gulf now. For, well, our Persian Gulf fleet. That's good. Let me just quickly check exports again, just to make sure everything is set, and it is. Assets balance looks good. Steel is beginning to stockpile again. Let's quickly check structures listing. I'm already feeling like I've taken the long route. So, like a genius, these are actually things that require steel, not that produce steel. Okay, whatever, one idiot. Is there a fast way of reactivating all of these? I basically wanted to get an idea of how many steel plants I had in a really quick and easy way. Imagine this being painful to watch on YouTube. Let's have a look at steel. Basically, once we've got a certain amount, we can build up to a few hundred. We can kind of mothball our steel plants. Sites. So we've got a furnace in Syria, Smyrna, arm shop. That's actually an arm shop that produces steel. So we've got 4 steel furnaces. One in Sinop, Ankara, Zonguldak, and Syria. 6 units apiece. In fact, 8 units in Ankara. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not something that's on the cards now, but I'm just thinking of ways that we can kind of reduce the amount of coal consumption. Because once we get a certain amount of steel, there's just going to be no point in reducing it for its own sake. It's not a lot, though. It's like 3 units of coal per site, you know what I mean? So I guess coal, it's everything. It's not. It runs the railways. It's not really... Yeah, I don't think it won't make much difference. You know, we might save like 10 units of coal or something. We're currently importing... I mean, to be fair, there's no massive shortage at the moment. It's not like we're having big issues. And we're still a net positive. Okay. What I'm going to do is dole out for another... look at another kind of site that we can look at a bit of kind of foreign investment. Tea's obviously good. Let's try a silk plantation in Shanghai. Now, silk is not a commodity we're ever going to export because we just don't have, unless there's a way of synthetically producing it at some point. So getting silk to be produced in Shanghai would be a bad thing. 7 units of capital, 1 coal, 2 manufactured goods. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's have a look at coal sites in China, shall we, first of all? Okay, so it's all going to be in the north, isn't it? Mukden. 2,000. See, I've got a horrible feeling it's going to cost a lot more than that, and we'll end up incurring more inflation. Let's do timber. See, there's almost no capital expended at all. Let's look at where else in the world we can build logging. It's really annoying that you can't just turn off. Okay. This is Chinese controlled. It's 3, so it'll be in the Chinese market because it's a large enough town that it doesn't need a kind of collection site. It's in an area that's quite close to kind of what would theoretically become fringe Indochina. That's the only thing. Hanoi's here, so I'm assuming this will be included in a French Indochina. I just don't want to kind of gift the French kind of timber site. Well, the other thing I suppose would be Thailand or Siam. Let's try Siam. See, that cost a lot more, didn't it? Okay, well, that's unloaded some capital. Let's check our operational costs. 1653, 14. There's a 200 margin there. That should be good. It means it shouldn't incur any inflation. Okay. That's the turn pass. You see, steel. We're alright. We'll be okay. We just need to sit back. I don't want to import steel. We produce so much. It's just that we've used a lot. Yeah. Gonna put you on pause, gonna pass the turn. We'll see you on the other side in early March. Okay, welcome back. It's early March, and good round. In terms of action reports then, first engagement, excuse me, is Kronstadt. This is just sort of like a bit of a skirmish, by the looks of it. Mehmed Ali Pasha engages Hinnickstein. We about 2,000 casualties apiece. They just under 3,000 casualties. That's the first engagement in fairly heavy snow. Now this, I think, is the Austrian attempt to assault Drobeta, because there's a militia brigade in there that's been converted into a line brigade now, combined with the garrison, and that militia brigade has taken casualties. That militia brigade will be used for the interior. Actually, no, we'll keep that in Drobeta to try and keep revolt risk down. But anyway, that's it's a defeat because the Austrians managed to get into the town. They take nearly 10,000 casualties storming the town that has really only a fairly generic fortress garrison that obviously has disappeared now because there's no longer a siege. It's a garrison that's mustered in the event of a siege, and a line infantry, a couple of line infantry regiments really. We take 5,000 casualties out of a total force of 19,000, but they managed to obviously get partially into the town. It's a defeat for us, but it's kind of a win really, isn't it? And they don't take it because a relief force obviously arrives. And this is the relief force. Then Ahmed Pasha arrives. It's a big victory. I mean, an Austrian force of 24,000 casualties. They take 21,000 casualties, of which it's 9,600 prisoners. We only take 3,000 casualties. We get a national morale point for that. And again, that's exactly the kind of thing that we expected. It's the scripts that we're used to. Austrians, yeah, clocking up L's. They lose six regiments, 6 elements, laid waste to, and that's exactly what we're here to do. Yeah, good news. So we've got the left flank then of Army Group East secured. We're going to keep Ahmed Pasha on an offensive posture. The Austrians are now beginning to assemble serious forces. We're seeing a force being kind of constructed in Banat. That is a serious force. We can't see any leaders there yet, but we want to hold a position for the time being, I think, on the left flank. In terms of other actions, that's the one. The only other one then is Laibach. That's now Hussein Avni Pasha is obviously adjacent to the Guard Corps, so offers support, but the Guard Corps takes that town, and yeah, Laibach's in the bag. Mehmed Izzet Pasha gets congratulations for that, but his new position provides us with more insight. The Austrians are assembling a force then on really the kind of like the sort of polar peninsula area. It's under Wilhelm Ramming. Then there is an army corps with a supply train. In addition to that, also present in that, I guess in the town, is a reserve corps, plus I think a bunch of garrison units, plus a Landwehr infantry division. Yes, so they are, they're starting to get a serious force together. To the north in Udine is 3 army corps. I mean, that is a field command, but with no commander. But if that's folded in with Vamming's force, that is a serious force. That's over 100,000 men right there. In addition to that, in central Hungary, they're beginning to concentrate forces. Got a heavy artillery regiment, siege artillery, Landwehr Corps, Army Corps, mixed forces. 13th Army also. So yeah, I mean, mixed forces under Albert von Ostrich, and then von Neiping, or Neiperg. Again, I think mostly this is garrison forces plus a small command, which is now comprised of 2 army corps, what looks like maybe a brigade or a kind of like a small garrison force, plus a supply train. So they're beginning to put forces together. They're definitely up for a fight. The march to Slavonian has resulted in the third army not being in great shape. We're going to roll the dice and press for kind of hold at all costs here, because we have got the river, plus a lot of this force isn't mobile. A lot of this force includes garrison, Plus he gets the support of the second army to the north in Croatia. So we're going to take a bit of a risk there. What do we do on the left, the far left though? That's the question. I mean, Mehmed is still activated. There's no way that we can prosecute an offensive with such limited forces, but a defensive position in Laibach with the support of Hussein Avni might be doable. Furthermore, there's, I mean, yeah, what do we do? I think for the time being we hold position. We're just going to hold all of our positions, but we're going to set the guard corps to defend and retreat. So if he is engaged by a sizable force, after a few rounds he'll pull back. Presumably towards the second army, which is his kind of parent command. Well, we've got the Signals Regiment there, and let's move that 7 days. That'll join up with the second army, or the fifth army rather. And then on the far right we've got the fourth army, which failed to force march. He's no longer activated, and it's 15 days away from Constanta. And that even looks a bit surplus to requirements, because a lot of the Austrians strengthen the right. We still want to keep that force in the reserve on the right, because we can use that force once it's recovered for a bit of exploitation. I mean, this right flank looks open, and what we want to do is to draw Austrians away from the centre. So to that end, we are going to be a bit aggressive here. We have got Ahmed Mukhtar. He's activated. To that end, we're going to make a move. We're going to detach his command then up to Bukovina. Oh no, it doesn't. It won't cross it. Okay, of course it won't, right? I guess not then. We could move into Transylvanian. We'll do that. 9 days, assault posture, and then from there maybe you can press around. Or if not, we'll keep this kind of. We'll move from Moldavia into Bukovina. We'll do it that from Constanta, so that's still open, but there's no real risk there. We can't see anything. I mean, the Austrians had a force here, but they've pulled it back. There's like small Austrian forces in Russian-held territory. They have transit rights, I guess. That's it. It's going to be a quiet round, this one, I think. We're going to, we've conducted regional offensives. We've scored some nice, easy wins. We've bumped our war score up a little bit. It's a good beginning to the campaign. We didn't really plan for a sizable offensive until the spring or the summer. But it's beginning, we've kind of, we've conducted small localized offensives. That clears the Dalmatian coastline and puts us in a better position for large-scale offensives. What I'm really worried about is this force here. I don't like this force. We've got railroad access to Fiume, but I think it's probably late in the day to start sort of transporting fortress units into the city. I mean, we could detach 2 fortress units from Sarajevo. That's quite close. 2 days on railroad. I'm going to chance that they'll get there before an Austrian force can march, even though the weather's quite good there. I'm going to roll the dice with that, I think. Because of the negligible threat to Adrianople, we're going to detach 2 fortress garrisons and send them to Sarajevo. Or 240 days if they were marching. 5 days, there we go. Nice. Yeah, nothing to report there. Well, nothing more to report really. Just checking maritime stuff. No Austrians, that's good. Austrian command parity, combat power sits at 1.47. So they're actually building forces as well. It might be that they've got the same number of forces, but they're structuring them a little bit more effectively for offensive operations. That will boost their command power, so it might just be that. One thing I am going to do is we still have a small force here. We've got Ahmed Ayub Pasha. What if we got the transport fleet? This is like an expeditionary force. An incomplete expeditionary force. But we could couple in with that. Yeah, from Adrianople we could fold in. We've got a Hungarian force being formed. This is for the reserve pool. Yeah, we could fold in this reserve corps, get the transport fleet down, and then lift that and deposit that force in Fiume. That would be a sizable enough force. That would be a decent force. Ayub Pasha is a good commander. He gets then support from Zagreb. That might be an option, or at the very least deposit him in Spalato. It's a force that's surplus to requirements. It's not a fully fledged army force. It's not a fully fledged size force, but it's enough. It's enough that it can hold that left flank. And what's the weight? 40 plus. So it's 140 is the weight. And our transport fleet can carry 200. Yeah, so that's easy peasy. That's definitely doable. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do it. "5 days. Then we'll, once it's in Constantinople and the capital, we'll fold it into the transport fleet." Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Let's have a look at naval construction program. Coming along. State money's good. Capital's good. Steel is recovering. Academy of Sciences is fine. Flying or field telegraph train, national weather surface, steel ships, and torpedo boats. 35 officers. So we can get a conscript corps. We can begin recruiting and furnishing such a force now. What have we got very quickly in Ankara? No, they're the various support units. Right, we'll recruit that in Sinop then. Doesn't leave us short of anything. Good. We're looking good. Alright, so this is no longer a reserve pool. This is now the reserve pool. This, I believe, is now the 8th Army in formation. Yeah, it will be the 8th. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th Ordu. 8th Order. Ordu, I think, in terms of the etymology of our English word, horde comes from that, even though there's no real relation other than the fact that it just means a military force. I think Ordu actually would have been corps, but I might be wrong, as opposed to army, but it tends to feature as army. It might have just been a kind of generic term for a unit of military organization. And that's it. So we're beginning to construct a force. We've got... Oh, hang on. Did I begin constructing cavalry divisions? No, I didn't. That's okay. Right, good stuff. Let's check our assets balance and make sure there's not even short of anything. Inflation's still sound at 2%. And we are going to do really quickly as well. We've got the first fleet. Is we're going to take some of these forces. We've got 2 corvette squadrons here. Let's put them in the fleet reserve. And then from the fleet reserve, we'll take 2 corvette squadrons. Put that in the first fleet. And then we've got 2 frigate squadrons. Fleet reserve. And then from that, we'll take a frigate and a corvette squadron. Okay, that gives us a command then of fully fledged modern ships. Right, so that's the first fleet. We're going to sortie the first fleet into the Adriatic, mainly to provide us with intelligence on the coastline, and also we could make use of naval gunfire support if required. We don't think the Austrians have any ships. We're going to set to kind of intercept en route just in case there's anything. 7 days. Excellent. Ironclads off the coast of Trieste then. Good. Right, that's it. I'll pass turn and then we'll probably leave it in late March with the beginning of the spring. Unless the Austrians make any aggressive moves, there's no real big engagements, I think, earmarked for this turn. But again, that's all very sort of contingent on what the Austrians do. But yeah, we're not in a rush to grab Vienna. We want to grind their force down. We basically want to, yeah, just demilitarize the empire as best we can. Reduce them to a confined space. And then keep them kind of on their knees. As the actress said to the... Yeah, that's it. I'm going to put you on pause. It's early March. Put you on pause, past turn, and we'll see you on the other side in late March. Okay, welcome back. It's late March, 1873. No significant actions in the last fortnight, but some interesting developments. So, the Austrians do indeed press into Laibach. Now, we had a guard corps there that was set to defend and retreat. As it is, that commander assessed correctly that the Austrian force under Raming was so overwhelmingly strong that he fell back and is back in Zagreb. That's fine. We can fold his command back into the second Urdu, and the Austrians are besieging Laibach. That's okay. That's fine. I mean, we can counter that move. Weather is starting to clear now. What we're seeing is a lot of snowfall. I mean, we're in late March now, so beginning of spring. A lot of snowfall replaced by, I guess, the wet season, so the heavy rainfall. So movement maybe takes a bit longer, but incurs less organizational loss. I may be wrong there, but I'm thinking that's my assumption, what it would be. So the Austrians they are beginning to conduct a counteroffensive in the far west position. We are in a position to counter that now. The good thing about this also is it's bought us a bit of time to get Hussein Avni's command back up to scratch. He's had some time to rest. The third army under Abdul Karim Nadir has also rested. It's achieved a lot of reorganization. It's not perfect, but it's in better shape than it was, having conducted a march from Cattaro in fairly heavy weather across some pretty tough terrain. I think we'll probably keep him on the defensive, but I think we will... I mean, I'll end the video this turn, but I'll conduct basically the planned moves, and then the next video can pick up sort of next turn in early April. So Hussein Avni with the Imperial Guard Corps folded back in, was set to defensive posture. we will conduct a counter-offensive into Laibach. It's a 7-day march. Weather in Laibach is not great. It's hilly. It's still snowy there. But my assessment is that's going to be a square fight. And a square fight just led by a better, more experienced commander with more experienced troops. We should come out on top. It's going to be an offensive and an all-out attack. He's not adjacent to anything, so he doesn't have any kind of supporting commands. The Austrians do have adjacent forces, but as far as we can see, they don't have adjacent commanders. This does divide our command in the west, which is a little bit of a gamble, but I think it's worth doing. We want to give the Austrians a bloody nose. We want to kind of keep as much fluidity in this position as possible. The reality is the Austrians have more forces than us in the west. So if we sit, the longer we sit still, the more that they get an advantage. If we keep moving around, keep kind of unsettling them, keeping them on their heels, sort of throwing our weight from left to right, that should buy us a bit of time. And we are going to be bringing in an additional command, which is an expeditionary force we had in Cyrenaica. We should be in a position now to get the first independent corps, which are the Czech volunteers, onto our transport fleet. There we go. And then bring the transport fleet over to, I think it's Solun. Yeah, it will be Solun. That's 13 days. That's a shame. I mean, most of these actually are even just riverboats. At some point, we're going to have to address that and construct a transport fleet that's entirely comprised of fully fledged kind of ocean-going transporters. I mean, it's a little bit of a cobbled-together force. But anyway, so it's going to be probably a good month or so before it'll be Ahmed Ayoub's command. That'll be fairly sizable. Once it's it'll be two fully fledged infantry corps plus a cavalry division plus a supply train. That should be enough. That'll pack a punch. And if we can land that either again in Spalato or Fiume, that covers us on the left and gives us a force with which we can provide support to the Second Army under Hussein Avni. In the east, pretty static, no big developments. The Sixth Army secures Strasbourg or Transylvanian in the Carpathians, and we've got mixed Austrian forces. Then we got von Philipsburg, by the looks of it, in command of a single corps to the north in Bukovina. And then, another Austrian corps in Ruthenian. Austrian forces are very divided then. They have provided a leader then to this force in a Russian-controlled territory. It seems like a small force, but they've got a commander there. I mean, that force, from what I can assess, is too small to be able to take Moldavia. We've got the Fourth Army in place now in Constanta. We're going to set that to passive. Evade combat, put in the garrison, and that basically that's providing that force with kind of almost long-term leave. It allows for much faster force recovery, especially now it's inside the town. So it's giving the troops, the officers, some leave, gives the staff commanders time to reorganize the force, and within a fortnight or so, that force should be combat worthy, and we can kind of get it marched up into Moldavia. That's pretty much it. I mean, the offensive that we'll be looking at, I mean, the only big action we could be looking at is Laibach. Other than that, we're now going to be kind of like really gearing our forces and preparing for a big spring offensive. Heavy rainfall, for the most part, over the kind of Hungarian plains. Snowfall still in the mountainous areas. But within a month or so, this area is going to be clear and open for months of mobile warfare. And that's what we're going to be looking at, and scoring some big wins against the Austrians. See, I'm thinking there's nothing bordering Kronstadt. I think the other thing we'll do then, even though it's still the weather's not great, is to move the First Army into Hermannstadt to secure that ground. Because from there he can still support the Sixth Army and he can support the Fifth Army on his left. It actually makes sense. It's actually a better place to have him than in Kronstadt. It's a 10-day march. We'll look at assault. And again, we'll look to inflict as much damage on Henigstein and his command, which is a partially formed army, really. It's like basically a couple of army corps in Hermannstadt. So that'll be our move on the right flank. And then that's pretty much it. The only other thing we're going to do is looking at now steel. One of the reasons that we're eating really heavily into our steel stockpile and we're constantly playing catch up is because, of course, our naval reinvestment program or our naval reconstruction program, even though these are ironclads for the purposes of gameplay, it's basically processed, metal. It's synthetically created metals. Iron, I mean, I suppose iron, wrought iron, I mean, if iron is kind of shaped, if it's used for the purposes of construction, it's considered steel for the purposes of gameplay. So even though these ships are ironclad, their construction requires a significant amount of steel, as opposed to just a raw commodity, because it's a refined process. It's not just pig iron, is it? Being kind of stuck to timber. So yeah, it makes sense. That's reasonable for the purposes of gameplay. That is considered steel. That's eating into our stockpile. So one thing we are going to invest in, which we're very close to anyway, and that is a Siemens regenerative furnace. Now that should give us a 500% modifier, the base intrinsic production of the following merchandise is steel. So that's a dramatic increase. We're really close to this, so at 95%. Investment gives us a guaranteed 1% per turn. So at least within 10 weeks, possibly before, we'll have that. And we'll begin upgrading our steel furnaces. That might actually allow us to mothball one or two of them. It means that our steel production's much more efficient as well. We're producing much more steel for the same coal cost. We'll wait until we get to a few hundred steel, and then we'll look to mothball, possibly even close down one of our steel plants. See, we're already at that point of capitalist development now, where increasingly we're looking at restructuring, greater efficiency, this kind of thing. And this is where you begin to have a capitalism that can result in things like unemployment, I suppose. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, we've got the transport fleet heading south. The first fleet sorted into the Adriatic. They make good time. Of course, ironclads, pure kind of... I mean, yeah, they have auxiliary sails, but these are pure screw propulsion ships, really. Made good time to get into the kind of Gulf of Venice. We'll set them off the coast, set to a defensive posture. That way they don't kind of atrophy organisation. And what we can see is the Austrians have a significant force in Bologna. I don't know how big those forces are. Probably brigade or division size, but if they are all corps size forces, that is a very substantial force indeed, and it wouldn't take that force long. Note that the weather is very good here. And that there's pure railroad access. No, there isn't. There's a break at Udine. But they could get that force very quickly into sort of the Polar Peninsula. That could be dicey if that happens. Yeah, we want to get Ayub Pasha as soon as possible, really, ideally into Fiume. Okay. Read the rest of the reports, in case there's anything I've missed. Okay, so one report I did notice is we have a small insurgency developing. One of them is in Syria. We'll set this cavalry brigade to defensive posture. All-out attack. What else do we have here? It's being besieged, so this is just this garrison. We haven't got much in the way of local forces, really. I guess we'll get the militia brigade in Baghdad to press north to lift the siege in Mosul. They're actually besieging Mosul. It's 10 days. We use the river. 7, that's better. And it might even... It's railroad access, like we can get railroad access to Beirut. What I'm going to do as well is quickly break off. It's going to be a mountain division. They're not obliged, incidentally, to operate in mountainous terrain. We're going to break one off, stick them on railroads and put them in Beirut as a precautionary measure. 6 days. That means if for whatever reason this cavalry brigade is not enough to deal with these Syrian insurgents, we've got an entire infantry division, which is a more substantial force. It's 13,000 men. That will be enough to kind of secure re-provide security really to kind of central Syria. So this force is almost complete. We're going to put it on railroads, I think, put it to Adrianople. Four days, good. So these volunteers that we captured up in Bosnia, these are Hungarians, Hungarian volunteers, nice. Eighth Army's starting to take shape then. These conscripts are going to take a little bit of time. They've not even begun yet. That's it. I mean, in terms of being a forever war, obviously it's just the beginning, and the entire conflict, you know, because it's going to be permanent, you know, unless something significant happens. The idea is once we stabilize the situation, destroy most of the Austrian army, then it won't be depicted each turn. It'll be kind of, it might take a year or two, but then it will just go back to almost be like a peacetime situation with just a military frontier. And if during a quarterly period I have to conduct a sortie or two, I can just mention that. But it will be, in the meantime, we will depict this campaign. It's because it's quite interesting. The Austrians are, you know, they're concentrating their forces in a rational kind of way. They've got substantial forces. It's, you know, we've got a work cut out for us. And my thinking is as well, is that, I might be wrong, but the more technology develops during this period, the less warfare is going to be based on the flair of individual commanders. My hunch is that. Or even troop experience. Warfare will be much more attritional, more slow, more cumbersome. And that will make wars against Austria, you know, much more difficult. There won't be opportunities for these flashy kind of big engagements, you know. And I suppose that's just a permanent feature of industrial warfare, with our exceptions, of course, to that. I mean, in the mid-20th century, there's a bit of a return, you know, with the use of novel tactics, combined arms, and the mobility provided by armor and mass use of trucks and things like this obviously allows for much greater mobility, and for commanders to reassert themselves a bit of individual flair. But I'm thinking that during this period, up to 1920, my suspicion is the greater military technology develops, the more attritional warfare is going to become. That's another reason why it makes sense to do it now, the early 1870s. Because we don't want to be in a position where we just end up having hideous losses against an Austria that we would be able to defeat otherwise, were it not for kind of machine guns and stuff like that, you know, which are in the process of being developed, of course. So, yeah. Anyway, it's late March. Our moves are made. I'll conduct economic administration for the turn, and we'll pass turn, and the next video then will pick up, I guess, in early April. And it won't be so long. I'm not going to leave it 2 weeks. I'll try and get one in a few days or something. Yeah, and we'll see how Laibach and Hermannstadt work out. I can't see any real problems there. Laibach is probably going to be a tougher fight. It's going to be a much closer fight because there's no real support for the Second Army. But we'll see what happens anyway. Yeah, so thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.